Welcome to the morning after week 13 here in the CFFL. It's been a little while since we've done a show. I think since we've done a show, there have been a few more injuries. The Chiefs did lose their first game, I think, before that. Squeaked by in the last two. They've had two kicker injuries, another one, and Lord knows now I think Butker is supposed to be back soon, but you never know. He might decide that being a stay-at-home dad was more worthwhile. So we'll have to see. They could be, down to Matthew Wright and Schrader, wherever that'll be. But as we move on now into our CFFL Week 13 and we finish up the regular season here, the Black Dingoes take down the Minotaurs to keep their divisional hopes alive, 82.5 to 46. Dr. Dane takes down the Colts 69-64 in a battle for pride. Badgers on a Monday nighter, thanks to a big pass by Bo Nix, take down the Horn Dogs 64 to 60 to keep their hopes for a first round bye alive, although the Horn Dogs do clinch even in a loss. Maulers defeat the Team Price is Right 67 to 63 and a half. The lucky breaks for the Team Price is Right, who tend to squeak by in these games, did not happen this week. The Dynamite fall to the Cardinals 98 to 76. Dynamite still put up a lot of points, which helps them out because it's their only way into the playoffs. And the Bruisers continue their hot streak as they've won, I think, 4 in a row and are now the hottest team in the league. 70 to 62 and a half there. Really, really damaged the playoff hopes for the Little Big Men. As for the playoffs, right now I sit at 9-4 with the top seed. Horn Dogs tied with me about a ways back in points. The Badgers also at 9-4. So the three of us are fighting for two buys. The Horn Dogs have one of them. Myself and the Badgers have the other, fighting for the other one. Team Price is Right currently sits at 7-5-1, half a game ahead of the Black Dingoes and the Bruisers. Both of them can pass up the Team Price is Right with a win and a Team Price is Right loss. Bruisers would need to outscore the Dingoes by 14.5 points to win the division. Bruisers could win and still miss the playoffs. Only 4 teams are set. 3.999. Maulers are a fair amount ahead of everybody else in points. So I would think they would get in the 6th seed even if they lose. They could fall and be outscored though. If they had a bad week and someone else had a really good week. So he's not for sure in. The winner of the North Division, whether it be Team Price is Right, the Bruisers or the Black Dingoes would get in. Little Big Men will need a lot of stuff to happen. They would need to beat Holsey. They would need the Bruisers to win. They would have to outscore the Bruisers by 6.5 points. And they would fall into the 5 seed. And then the Black Dingoes, I guess either Black Dingoes or Team Price is Right. Well, he could get in a couple different ways. Bruisers win, and the Black Dingoes and Team Price is Right lose. If Team Price is Right or the Dingoes win, he would need that situation with the points. So it's kind of complicated here. In the last week, we have 9 teams still alive, so it's kind of crazy and kind of fun that it's down to that. Dynamite, if the Maulers lose, they're in deep trouble to get into the playoffs because the Maulers have fallen to the 6th seed. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. And then we'd have to look at the points advantage going into the playoffs in the pod system, the wild card. We do know one team, whoever wins the North Division will be in the first wild card pod. We do know the Maulers most likely will be in the pod, and whoever doesn't win the division between the Badgers and the Cardinals will be in. Also, in terms of money, I haven't put that up because it's still kind of way up in the air. Looks like I'll get the $150 for the most points. Looks like at the moment he's 11 points ahead of him, but the Maulers right now would get the $50 for the second most points, and currently the high points I have at 3 on the year. I'd win 20 because we had 10 carried over from last year. If one of the other teams with 2 wins, which I believe are the Dingoes, the Dynamite, and the Horn Dogs, if they would win this week, then we'd split that 10 and 10. But we should be able to get rid of that and get all caught up in there this year. All right, we're going to take a look at the best picks and the worst picks this year. Actually, the all plays a very quick touch on that. Black Dingoes, better all play than their real record. The other one that stands out is the Horn Dogs, who are 9-4, but are at 69, 72, and 2. So they should be a 500 team, but they've had some good luck go their way. Little big men, a little bit of good luck, but not too much. Dynamite have had the worst luck. They should be a 500 team because they're pretty up and down. Um, but instead they're like 3-8-1, 3-9-1, some 4-8-1. Not a good year for them. I'm there. Now, as for the best and worst picks, Team Dynamite, best pick, Saquon Barkley, fantasy MVP at pick 11. Didn't really give him consideration at 6. I know Michael at pick 8 really didn't give much consideration, but he's been fantastic, way better than I expected he would be. I thought he was kind of on the downside of the career, but nope, he's been awesome. Worst pick, his receivers picks were rounds 3, 4, and 6 with Waddle, Adams, and Christian Watson. Specifically Waddle and Watson. Adams has been okay. For a 4th round pick, I can't criticize that one too much. I have Waddle in this league and the other league. He's been pretty disappointing, so it's kind of sucked. With Tua being hurt, they've just not been very good. The Horn Dogs, the best pick I thought was JSN in round 8, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's had some other solid picks. Josh Jacobs in the 2nd round was probably a little early, but he's played pretty well, so can't criticize that one really too much. But Smith and Jigba's probably become the #1 receiver in Seattle over the second half of the year, and he's been pretty darn good. Worst pick, CJ Stroud in round 5. He has been a pretty big flop. The Texans have kind of been a flop. He's not really startable, especially being taken when he was ahead of guys such as Joe Burrow, guys such as Jaden Daniels. So disappointing there. My best picks were my running backs. I drafted Gibbs, Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, Chuba, and Bucky, all running backs I drafted, as well as Ray Davis, who's been a pretty solid handcuff if you'd ever need it. Not that he's really reliable, but if someone would happen to cook, he'd be darn good. So I did well there. Worst pick, Mark Andrews in round 7. Not really usable pretty much all year. Very inconsistent. He's starting to play better now. If you needed him as like a 3rd receiver, he would be okay. But he wouldn't be somebody you would really be super excited about, especially in round 7. He's more like a round 14 pick the way it's been this year. Next up, we have the Bernie's Bruisers, who, no offense, Bernie, but you didn't have anybody that really knocked it out of the park in terms of your picks. They were all solid or slightly disappointing on some of them. But you traded your worst pick, Sam Laporte, at pick 47 for Chuba Hubbard, who I drafted in around like 9. And at the time, I thought, oh, this is an awesome deal. No, that was not a great pick, a great trade by Bernie. Chuba's been awesome. He's slowing down a little bit, but definitely at worst a #2 running back this year. And you got him for like a #5 receiver. So good job there on that. The rest of the picks are all okay. Team Price is Right, by far his best pick, Joe Mixon at pick 28. If you would redraft today, he'd probably be top 7-ish overall. Worst pick, Trevor Lawrence in round 8. Not too bad a value. I mean, round 8 isn't too bad, but he has been pretty much useless all year. Fantasy-wise, it's been terrible. Oh, the one thing I should clarify, injuries, I didn't really take into account. If an guy got injured, I didn't really hold that against the person. So we'll see when we get to the Colts about that. Dr. Dangerous, best pick, David Montgomery in round 5. Montgomery, every year, probably should be a top 30 pick. Kind of touchdown dependent, but he scores lots of touchdowns, and he's good for probably 80 total yards a game. So, very good pick at round 5. Worst pick, Tyreek at pick 5, which I thought would have been a great pick. I was excited to get him at 6 if he fell to me. To his injury, maybe him getting older, have made him a borderline #3 receiver this year. Maybe low end #2. Very surprising. Dolphins have been far from explosive this year. Bites his Badgers, Amon-Ra, and Puka in rounds 1 and 2. Puka's been hurt, but when he's played, he's been darn good. Worst pick, Zamir in round 6. Early in the draft season, I kind of thought he'd be a good pick in like round 4, round 5, because he looked so good last year. He would not have been a good pick in round 16, the way he's played this year. Just completely useless. Raiders running game's been bad. Surprisingly, that it panned out that way. Mike Smallers, Derrick Henry in pick 8. Most experts, draft experts, considered him like around, at best around, or pick 15, maybe around pick 20. Michael made a good choice in taking him at pick 8. He's been a top 8 player, top 5 player probably, if not top 4, 3. He's been good, very, very good. running pretty consistently and lots of touchdowns. Worst pick, Mahomes at pick 32. He's come around lately, but he's not been a good player this year in fantasy. Modern day Troy Aikman, the way he's played in terms of being a good game manager, great real life quarterback, mediocre fantasy quarterback this year. In case you notice, the theme is a lot of quarterbacks have been bust this year. Little big men, they're tight ends. They took Kittle in round 6 and Brock Bowers, who looks like the next big thing, probably a top 30 pick next year at least, in round 9 for Bowers. So really good picks there. Really number two running backs or number 2 receivers this year. Worst pick, Travis Etienne in round 2. I'm very surprised by that one. I thought he'd be a pretty good pick, maybe a little early round 2. But not really. Most people were expecting him there. But Jacksonville's been terrible, and he hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot. Last 3 teams, Black Dingoes took Nico Collins at pick 22. Nico was pretty solid last year, but has become one of the best receivers in football, if not the best. And then his worst was only drafting 3 running backs in the draft with Javonte Williams, who is modern day Leroy Horde. Go with some old school Tecmo Bowl players. Just a touchdown or bust. Literally got the first touchdown of the game last night, and I don't think he had any other points. He just had 6 points. It's unreal how bad he's been. Morton's Minotaurs, Jaden Reed in round 8. Jaden Reed's kind of touchdown or bust, but he's probably the most reliable Packers receiver. I think he's a top 6, 7, 8 receiver in fantasy this year. You wouldn't know it. He's kind of inconsistent, but for an 8th round, that's awesome. And not that this guy's been terrible, but Kyler in round 7, I drafted him similarly in the Wiffle League. Boy, he's frustrating. One good week, and then against a good team, and then he plays a bad team and he gets like 3 points. Highs and the lows are just meteoric and catastrophic lows, and just tremendous highs, but very inconsistent. Can't predict it. So he sucks a lot of times. He's very frustrating for me in the other league. Holsey's fighting Colts, lots and lots and lots of injuries. Courtland Sutton, though in round 11, was an awesome pick. He's been a top 5 receiver in fantasy this year. Debo in round 3, I really wanted Debo this year. I thought he'd get a lot of running, maybe McCaffrey being banged up, but he's not done anything. He has as many receiving touchdowns this year as Jared Goff, as Josh Allen. It's unreal how bad it's been for him. Just looks disinterested out there. So that is the show today. Final week here, so we'll go over it. Well, I'll try to do a show next week, even if it's very, very short, kind of going with the playoffs. So best of luck to everyone this week except Morton's Minotaurs. I would like that bye, so I prefer you don't win this week and I can win and get the bye. Otherwise, tune in. It'll be an exciting last week as almost every game has a purpose and will have an impact.